Well, good evening. We will begin with the verse of the Kesa. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Excuse me. I left my bell on the wrong side of the room. Thoughts of atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. So it just started raining, and I think we got a delivery at the same time, so the dogs just went nuts. So you get to experience that with me, so it's okay. Do the incense offering. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us now. The fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with precepts, concentration, and insight. We offer it for all beings. The homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I shall become one with the Buddha. I resolve that I shall each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I shall become one with the Dharma. The gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I shall become one with the Sangha. In the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great, the mighty, medium, short, small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. Metta prayer. May I be happy and well, may no harm come to me, may I learn compassion, may all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well, may no harm come to them, may they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. Okay. So we'll do a meditation. I still think it makes sense to do guided meditations with these online services, just because otherwise you're watching me meditate for 20 minutes, and that, I don't know, that would seem a little odd. But if you have feelings about that, feel free to let me know. So I'm going to do Metta Bhavana tonight. Just because I think we need a lot more goodwill in the world right now. So I'm going to guide you through that. If you want to turn your sound off, this will take about 20 minutes. And begin. Take a moment just to check your posture. Make sure you're sitting upright but not rigid, relaxed but not slumped, supporting your back, supporting your head from extended neck, shoulders relaxed downward, grounded. And find a comfortable place to feel your breath. And take a few deep breaths. And let your abdominal muscles be nice and soft so your belly can rise and fall freely. Your lungs can fill and empty freely. For this particular meditation, it's best to bring your attention to the center of your chest, to your heart, not the organ, the heart, but the center of the chest, sort of that heart center. But stay aware of your breathing. Know when you're breathing in, know when you're breathing out. And as you exhale, just let this thought ride on your breath. May I be happy. And this means right now, sitting here, breathing in, breathing out, opening up to the happiness that comes from within, that's found in the present moment. And just allowing that happiness to emerge and fill our hearts. May I be happy. May I be free from animosity. Any animosity that's present in your heart now, let it go. Any that arises as we do this meditation, just let it pass. Not clinging to any anger, any hatred, any ill will. May I be free from stress and affliction. And anything that comes into your awareness, you can just release or accept. There's no need to cling to anything or push anything away. Whatever arises, arises. There's no need to hold on. No need to have an aversion. Just let experiences come and go. Free from stress. And if we don't create stress and nurture it, we don't create afflictions. May I look after myself with ease. So just noticing how the mind moves and bringing it back to the object of meditation. Calmly, compassionately. Compassion for ourselves. being at ease. So let's take this happiness that's arisen in our hearts and share it. And you can think of this in terms of expanding circles, if you like. With yourself at the center, with the thought, may I be happy. And then imagine that thought expanding out to include other people. And let's begin with a dear loved one. Be a parent, child, spouse. Be a teacher who's shown you a lot of kindness, accepted you unconditionally. And you can imagine them here with you. Or think of their name, visualize them. And extend the thought, may they be happy. And as you do this, imagine that your happiness can radiate out and touch them. So we're sharing our happiness with our loved ones. May they be happy. Now think of a good friend. It could just be someone that you like, enjoy spending time with. It could be someone who's helped you in some way, someone who's been available to you during this difficult time. Call it to mind and let your care for them arise in your heart. And extend happiness to them also, imagining your circle of goodwill extending out farther, your heart, your loved one, your friend, with the thought, may they be happy. Now call to mind an acquaintance. Should be someone who's kind of neutral. You might even be a little ambivalent about them, or maybe you just don't know them very well yet. You might know very little about them, but you know that, like yourself and your loved ones and your friends, they want to be happy. And you know that, like yourself and your loved one and your friends, you're probably going through some difficulty right now. So think of them, visualize them, think of their name, and imagine that this circle of goodwill expands out farther, to include not just yourself and your loved one and your friend, but your acquaintance also. Including them in this wish, may they be happy. Now think of someone who you'd consider kind of an adversary right now. This doesn't have to be a sworn enemy or anything like that. Could be a friend or a loved one that you're just not getting along with at the moment. Or it could be someone who's rubbed you the wrong way or that annoys you. If there's someone who's caused you a real grave harm, if you're new to this would not be the person to choose. But whoever this is, think of them, imagine them here, or think of their name, and begin to wish them well. So resistance will probably arise. The ultimate idea is that you'll maintain this feeling of warmth and goodwill as you go from yourself through all these others. That takes practice. So don't try to feel any special way, just let the thought be there. And recognize that our relationships with people change. An acquaintance can become a friend friend can become a loved one can become an enemy. The person is still the same, you're still the same person. What changes is the way our mind engages with their presence. And also keep in mind that difficult people are difficult because they're experiencing stress and affliction and animosity. All those things that we want to be free from. So just send them the wish. May they be happy. And see if your feelings toward them soften even just a little bit. May they be happy. And finally extend this in all directions to all beings. Let your circle of goodwill grow infinite, radiating in all directions. May all beings be happy. And if you'd like, you can send that warmth in all directions, where you can imagine different kinds of beings, beings that crawl on the ground, there's that swim, fly, burrow. May all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. I hope some of you are hearing this rain too. It's really quite beautiful. But I hope you can hear me okay. So speaking of friends and loved ones and adversaries, I'm hearing from a number of people these days on social media and in conversations with students and colleagues and so on that being locked in together, that there's a level of togetherness that we maybe not used to, and too much togetherness can be too much of a good thing. So I thought I would talk a little bit about that tonight. Just kind of like trying to be make the best of this situation with regard to your close relationships. And hopefully this will be useful to you even if you're not locked in with somebody that you're in a relationship with. You know, none of us is an island. We're in a relationship with our world, and it can be a real satisfying affair or a dysfunctional mess or a harmonious marriage, depending on how we nurture it. So when we're out in the world, we can bring the Brahma Viharas to our relationships. You know, the metta, goodwill, is the first of the Brahma Viharas. And you know, when we encounter people, if we have this heart of kindness, when we're out in the world, we're going to be kinder people. And then there's compassion and gratitude and equanimity. And those are qualities that we can bring to the relationships with everyone that we deal with, but also to our intimate relationships. You know, as I said during the meditation, sometimes loved ones become adversaries, and sometimes adversaries become loved ones. You know, things change. It's part of being human. And you think about your relationship with different people. You know, there's people that you like, and so you want them to be happy. And there's people that you recognize their suffering, and you want them to do better, to feel better. And there's people that have shared with you, and you want to share with them, and you want them to enjoy whatever good fortune they have. And then there's people that you really can't do much for, or people who are, you know, experiencing their humanity in maybe particularly creative ways these days and stuff like that. And sometimes the form of love to bring to them is equanimity, you know, letting them experience their own karma, recognizing that they have to do that. But since we're living in a sort of cloistered existence with family and partners right now, I think it's a little bit different. I want to focus on that kind of thing. So, you know, there's a Buddhist teacher that I like a lot, Ajahn Brahm. He's famous because he's kind of funny. And one of his Dharma talks, he was talking about people coming to see him and asking him about relationships. And he says, I'm a Buddhist monk. What do I know about relationships? Because, you know, in his tradition, Buddhist monks are celibate, so they don't get married, and being a sort of solitary is important in that tradition. But, you know, I'm a Zen monk in a Japanese order, and so, you know, we can be married and that sort of thing. And so I don't have that cop out. I should know what it means to be in a relationship. And that doesn't mean that I necessarily have all the answers. So in my experience, you just have to get really lucky. But that doesn't help you very much. You know, I want to give you something that you can actually use. It's hard to generalize about this sort of thing. People are very complicated, and a relationship between two people is 4 times as complicated. And so if you're really struggling in a relationship, couple counseling, family counseling, things like that can be very useful, because it gives you an opportunity to talk to someone who can see things kind of objectively and that sort of thing. But I'll tell you what the Buddha said about these kinds of things, and give you some personal insights too, I hope. So the Buddha, you know, he's very realistic. He didn't expect everyone to leave and go be a monk. In fact, monks wouldn't have had anybody to support them if everybody had gone to be a monk. So he really meant for the middle way to be helpful to everyone in all aspects of life. And so all kinds of people came to him for advice about different things. And there are a number of discourses where he gives advice to householders about the different kinds of happiness that they can try to attain, including the kind of happiness that comes from loving relationships. And there's one that I really like a lot. It's called the Samajivana Sutta, which means living in tune, like tuning up instruments, living in tune. So this married couple invited the Buddha to come over for a meal, and then after he had eaten, then they had a question. And they were really very much in love and enjoying life together. And so they said, we want to see one another, not just in this life, but also in the life to come. And they wondered how they could do that. How could they live so that their love would endure even after this life ended? And the Buddha thought about this for a moment, and then he said, if a husband and wife want to see one another not only in the present life, but also in lives to come, each should be in tune with one another in conviction, in tune in virtue, in tune in generosity, and in tune in discernment. And then he said this verse. He said, husband and wife, both of them having conviction, being responsive, being restrained, living by the Dharma, addressing one another with loving words, they benefit in manifold ways. To them comes bliss. Their enemies are dejected when both are in tune in virtue. And having followed the Dharma here in this world, both in tune in precepts and practices, they delight in the world of the Devas, enjoying the pleasures of heaven. So let me unpack that just a little bit. So when you look into this, you're really finding a prescription for living a healthy, good, strong spiritual life within the context of a relationship. And the Buddha uses the words in tune as he talks about how people in a relationship could, I guess you could say, could bring their values, those things that they care about, that from which they find meaning and purpose, into alignment. So we talk sometimes about couples and whether or not people are compatible. And I think usually people are talking about shared interests and things like that. But I don't really think that that's particularly important. You know, Sensei Michelle and I have some shared interests, and we have some very different interests. And what's important is to be supportive of one another's activities and understand, you know, that people are finding meaning and purpose in what they do, and support that. You don't have to be into the same stuff. So instead of worrying about that, the Buddha talked about being in tune. You know, if you're playing music with other musicians, you have to tune your instruments together. You're sort of tuned to each other. So it's not enough for my guitar, for instance, to sound good to me. All the instruments have to sound right relative to each other. And so the Buddha is saying we need to be in tune in 4 different ways: in our spiritual values, in self-discipline, in our way of living ethically, and in wisdom. So having similar spiritual development doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the same religion. You can identify with different religions and still have compatible beliefs in spiritual development. So both members of the partnership might think the spiritual life is important, even if they choose to make spiritual progress in different ways. I have a good friend who is a Zen monk, and he's had a long, happy marriage with a woman who follows a very different religion. But if you talk to them, you find that they have a shared understanding of the importance of spiritual values like gratitude and compassion and respect. And they have a lot of respect for one another's commitment to their spirituality and support each other in that way. And that's what's important. You don't have to both be Buddhist or Baptist or Catholic or anything else, as long as you understand what the purpose is of living a spiritual life and you support each other's purpose in that way. And so next, we need our morals or ethical values to be in tune. I don't like the word moral because that usually implies something that's sort of imposed from the outside. But Buddhist practice starts with restraining the actions of body, speech, and mind so as to not cause harm. So both partners should share an understanding of what that means. What are appropriate actions of body and speech, and what are not appropriate actions? And so yeah, I think it would be difficult for someone who's very conscious about not harming others to be in a relationship with a con artist, for example. Or for somebody who's careful to keep intoxicants from clouding their decisions to live with a partner who routinely overindulges in alcohol or abuses drugs. And you see these relationships, and they're usually not happy ones. But even when it comes to things that seem fairly harmless, like how we eat, you know, it can be really tough for one partner to be restrained in their diet if the other one keeps bringing home bags of junk food. So we should be kind of on the same page with these things and observe how our restraint or lack of restraint can be affecting our partner's life and health. It's also good to share attitudes toward things like being charitable and generous. So being concerned about injustice, for example, being supportive, contributing member of one's community. You don't have to be rich and go around writing checks together or anything like that, but um, if you're going to be engaged, sort of, share that value. You'll see couples sometimes where one partner is highly socially engaged and the other doesn't show a lot of interest in it, and that's okay, as long as they respect each other's values and they're not standing in each other's way. I think it would be very stressful to be in a partnership where one person is strongly committed to compassionate action and charity, and the other is convinced that that's a waste of time or money. Anyway, and finally, the Buddha said that both partners should have wisdom. And this doesn't mean that they go to the same school and get the same degree. I was talking about Sensei Michelle. She's working on her doctorate, and when she talks to me about school, I don't understand what she's talking about 2/3 of the time now. But that's not the kind of wisdom that I mean. I mean that they should have similar emotional maturity and be able to reason things out together and see what really matters, what's really meaningful and important in a situation. And so having a shared understanding of what's important in life. Too often we get hung up on how something makes us feel. And it's I think kind of the first step in wisdom is to realize that feelings are not the problem. Feelings are symptoms. Um, they shouldn't keep us from doing things. They shouldn't make us do things. If someone does something and I feel a certain way about that, the feeling is not the issue. Set the feeling aside and then say, okay, well, what really needs to happen here? A lot of times, once the feeling goes away, or once you're not giving it a lot of importance, then the situation becomes less important. A situation like the one that we're in right now gives us an opportunity to really kind of understand our relationships more deeply. That's not necessarily a pleasant process. The Buddha mentioned that he advised a lot of different people from different walks of life, and one of them was King Pasenadi of Kosala. And one day the king and the Buddha were sitting together. The king had come to visit him in a monastery. And there was a large group of ascetics from various sects who happened to walk past the monastery while they were talking. And so the king saw this and he got up and he went over and paid homage to them. And then after they left, he went back and he asked the Buddha if he thought, based on what he'd seen, that those ascetics were on a sound spiritual path. Were they headed toward enlightenment? And the Buddha said he didn't know. He said it's only through living together that a person's virtue can be known. Only through experience can you know if a person is trustworthy. Only by seeing a person in adversity can you know his endurance. Only by talking with them over time can you know their wisdom. And this knowledge only comes after an ample period of time, and even then, only by one who is attentive and discerning. And the king was delighted by this answer because it actually demonstrated the Buddha's own wisdom. Turned out that these ascetics were actually the king's spies in disguise. They were going out to spy on people dressed as ascetics. But let me back up to that a little bit. He said you can only really know someone through experience, through living with them, from seeing how they cope with adversity and so on. And so being locked down together, or just getting through an adversity like this one will give you a chance to really get to know someone on a deeper level. It's important, though, to remember that if someone is being difficult, that's the form their stress is taking right now. And this, a time like this can be very stressful to people. Some people, I'm kind of enjoying it, but I don't have too much to worry about right now. But a lot of people do, and suddenly being kind of thrust into a situation with people that you're not around a whole lot, even if they're people you love, can become a bit overwhelming. And so it's nice to remind ourselves that our own reactions to that and the reactions of the people around us are coming out of this position of stress. And so, this is the form the suffering takes. So the Buddha talked about speech as being important. And this reminded me of a story I heard a long time ago, I think at the Thai temple, I'm not sure. And it's been so long, my memory, I'm sure, has revised this story quite a bit, but I'll try to remember enough of it to tell you. So this couple went to the abbot of a temple, and they were on the verge, really, of just splitting up, the whole family. They just were not getting along. So during the day, they went their separate ways. I don't know, he worked and she worked at home or whatever, but they went their separate ways during the day. And then in the evening, they would be back in the household before dinner. And it was just from the moment they got back together until they went to bed at night, it was just constant bickering. And she complained that he didn't listen to her, didn't pay attention, didn't do what she asked. And he complained that she didn't listen to him, didn't do what he asked, didn't understand what was going on in his life, and so on. And so there was a lot of criticizing each other, and there was a lot of feeling like they weren't being heard. So the abbot said, okay, he said, if I hear you correctly, you don't feel like the other person is paying attention to you and is able to respond the way you want them to respond because they're not hearing you. He said, I'll wait right here. I'll be right back. And so he disappears for a minute. And he comes back and he's got a container of water, bottle of water. And he hands it to him and he says, this is holy water. And it's very special holy water. He says, this water has the capacity to make your words impossible to ignore. He says, so here's what I want you to do. As soon as you're together in the evening, before anything else, take a sip of this, but don't swallow it. Hold it in your mouth. And you got to hold it in your mouth for an hour before you swallow it. And then after you've held the sip of water in your mouth for an hour, you can swallow it, and then you can talk to each other. So the next day, they get together in the evening. Before anybody says anything, they remember the bottle of water. They each take a little sip, they hold it in their mouth. And so for the next hour, it's silent. And in this silence, he notices how she's working really hard to prepare a nice meal for himself and their children. And he looks around and sees how, despite having so much to do, she keeps the house pretty clean, and she takes care of all of that. And he starts to realize how much she does, and in this hour she accomplishes a whole lot. And so he starts to really appreciate her. In the meantime, she sees how tired he looks from being at work all day, and then she sees how he's gentle with their children, and they can't talk, he's helping the children get ready for dinner and that kind of thing. And so she starts to really appreciate him. And so about the time their meal is on the table, an hour has gone by and they can swallow. And sure enough, everything that comes out of their mouth that evening is sweet and kind because it's filled with appreciation. They've taken that moment to be quiet and observe what's going on. And instead of being caught up in what are they going to say next to what that person just said and complaining and responding to the complaint, they've taken time to notice what's happening. So the Buddha stressed the importance of using what he called loving words. Loving speech is really about bringing mindfulness and wisdom to what you say. And the first step in that is to pay attention. And the second step is to refrain from being hurtful. Anger and angry words never solve problems, never bring people together. And so even if the other person is communicating to us with anger, it doesn't help to respond with anger. If we can be kind, at least we don't escalate the situation. And we should show respect. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to use a certain formal way of talking or anything like that. It means we don't take our loved ones for granted. We don't feel entitled to what we get from them. We appreciate it. So if you're familiar with Nikon practice, that's a really good way to get to know your relationships better. If you're not familiar with it, email me and I'll send you some resources on that. But loving speech really begins with a state of mind. And so you probably know that a mantra is a word or a phrase spoken out loud or silent that contains a spiritual power. And Thich Nhat Hanh's got a book about relationships and love, and he offers 4 mantras that he says has the power to create strong relationships. And you might want to try these. I haven't tried them myself, but they make sense, and I've described them to some people who use them with some good results. And so the first mantra is, I am here for you. So this simply makes you present to the other person. You can't love someone if you're not there, even if you're physically there but mentally somewhere else. So call to mind your loved one, or look at them and think of their name, and say to yourself, I am here for you. So the second one is, I know you are there and I am glad. So you recognize the presence and the importance of the other person. You can't just care about someone if you don't recognize them. So to practice the second mantra, use that same thing. Look at them, be aware of them, and say to yourself, I know you were there and I'm glad. Sometimes people can be difficult, and it's important to recognize that this difficulty, angry words and thoughtless remarks and actions and so on, are the expression that their suffering is taking. So in a sense, that pain is suffering leaving their hearts and coming to ours. And we'll be better prepared to deal with it if we understand what's going on. And so the third mantra shifts from focusing on our reaction to focusing on what's really going on. I know you are suffering and I'm here for you. So our own suffering can take similar forms. Our stress is a source of adversity for our partner sometimes, and we need to be aware of that and to shift our focus away from blaming to understanding what's going on in our own heart and then what our actions are sending out. And so the fourth mantra is about this. I am suffering, please help me. So if you're experiencing too much of a good thing, try those. And let me know how that goes. I'm interested in knowing that. So I'm going to go ahead and close with the dedication. If you have questions, feel free to type them in chat, and I'll stay here and answer them. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now. In offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma, and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of this Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved in the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of the Sangha. May their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for all those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned who should be free, for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophes, man-made or natural. We pray for the health and well-being of all those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, all those working toward the healing of those afflictions. We pray for those suffering from COVID-19, those working to protect and treat them, and those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. At this time, we have members of our congregations, friends, and loved ones suffering from cancer and other diseases, and who are grieving for lost loved ones. We pray for them and send loving thoughts their way. May they all be serene through their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katam punya phalang maham sabe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings that spring from the good we have done. So give me a moment to grab my tablet. I'll see if anyone's asked any questions. So I don't see any questions or comments, which is fine. Yeah, be aware. You're welcome. Thank you for the feedback. So for those of you who are not aware, on Thursday nights we meet on Zoom, and it's 6 p.m. So if you need the link for that, email me and let me know. Or I think it's on the last email that I sent out on Sunday with what services are coming up this week. But those are basically discussion oriented. We're going to look at a couple of verses of the Dhammapada, and then I'll talk about those a little bit, and then we can discuss anything you want to discuss. So thank you very much for being here and for your attention, and have a good evening.